12, verses 4 through 7. It says, "But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and sealed the book even to the time of the end." Keep in mind that phrase, time of the end. That's very important, and you'll see why. "Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, there stood other two, and the one on one side of the bank of the river, and then the other on the other side of the bank of the river. And one said to the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, How long shall it be till the end of these wonders? And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto the heavens, and swore by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and a half a times." And brothers and sisters, that'll be significant when you understand the time, times, and a half of time. That is the prophecy that unsealed the time of the Millerite movement, and I'll show you why when we get there. But again, on to the seven thunders. Ellen White wrote in Early Writings, page 279 and 280, "I was pointed down to the time when the third angel's message was closing, and the power of God rested upon his people. They had accomplished their work and were prepared for the trying hour before them. They had received the latter rain, or refreshing from the presence of the Lord, and the living testimony had been revived. The last great warning had been sounded everywhere, and it had stirred up and enraged the inhabitants of the earth who would not receive the message. I saw angels hurrying to and fro in heaven, and an angel with a writer's inkhorn by his side returned from the earth and reported to Jesus that his work was done, and the saints were numbered and sealed. Then I saw Jesus, who had been ministering before the ark containing the 10 Commandments, throw down his censer. He raised his hands and with a loud voice said, 'It is done.' And all the angelic hosts laid off their crowns, and as Jesus made the solemn declaration, 'He that is unjust, let him be unjust still. He which is filthy, let him be filthy still. He which is righteous, let him be righteous still. He that is holy, let him be holy still.'" Now, brothers and sisters, where do we hear that verse? Where is that verse from? That verse is from Revelations 22:11. "He that is unjust, let him be unjust still. He which is filthy, let him be filthy still," and so on. But I want you to take note of the verse just before Revelation 22:11. It reads, "And he saith unto me, Seal not the sayings of the prophecy of this book, for the time is at hand." What time? Next verse, "He that is unjust, let him be unjust still. He which is filthy, let him be filthy still," and so on. So the time that is at hand is the close of probation for the living, for everyone, for the whole world. Everyone outside of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which probation closed earlier. But the point is that when we read "He that is unjust and that is unjust still," and then the verse prior to that talks about really an unsealing. It says, "Seal not the sayings of this book," which is really saying unseal at this point. Unseal, because remember, probation's going to close. Why would you not seal something that's already, probation's about to close? So what it's saying is unseal, for the time is at hand. Probation is about to close. So when we read on, we want to know, well, where is this prophecy about the sealing? Whatever this is that's sealed. The only prophecy that's sealed in the book of Revelations is the seven thunders, and we can read about that in Revelations 10, verses 1 to 4. It reads, "And I saw a mighty angel, another mighty angel, come down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was on his head." Now we know this is the angel of the Lord. "And his face was shone as the sun, and his feet were as pillars of fire. And he had in his hand a little book, and he set his right foot upon the sea, and his left foot upon the earth. And he cried with a loud voice as when a lion roars. And when he had cried, 7 thunders uttered their voices. And when the 7 thunders had uttered their voices, I was about to write, and I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, Seal up those things which the 7 thunders uttered, and write them not." Okay, so the only prophecy in the book of Revelation that was sealed up are these 7 thunders. Now you might say, well, that's a strange connection. How do you make that connection between Revelation 10 verses 4 and Revelation 22:11? Well, we find it in Bible Commentary number 7, page 971 and 972. This is Ellen White commenting about the book of Revelations. These are her words. She writes, "After these seven thunders uttered their voices, the injunction comes to John as to Daniel in regards to the little book. Seal up those things which the seven thunders uttered. These relate to future events." Now she says here, the first thing she says is the injunction comes to John as to the book of Daniel. Now remember, the book of Daniel was sealed up in the Millerite time, or prior to the Millerite time, and unsealed in the Millerite time due to the unsealing of the times and a half of times prophecy, which is the prophecy of the 1260, which was fulfilled in 1798 when the beast received a deadly wound. That was the unsealing. That was the prophecy that was unsealed in the Millerite time as far as the book of Daniel is concerned. Now in the book of Revelations is unsealed in the latter rain time, the time of the 144,000. So let me read on, and it said, seal up these things which the seven thunders uttered, and she said, these relate to future events. Now this Bible commentary, which is actually I believe a quote from, let's see, I was going to say manuscript releases, but I don't see that. But it is in Bible commentary, page 971, volume 7, which is the commentary on the book of Revelations. So she says, oh, by the way, which is written in 1900. That was the point as I was getting at, is they relate to future events. Now, she's not saying it relates to future events to John, because if she was, she would state what those future events were. She wouldn't leave that blank, that point blank. She says, these relate to future events which will be disclosed in their order. Now, again, if they were already disclosed, she would state what they were. So we know that she's referring to future events to 1900. All right, so she says, Daniel shall stand in his lot at the end of days. John sees the little book unsealed. Then Daniel's prophecies have their proper place in the first, second, and third angels' messages to be given to the world. The unsealing of the little book was the message in relation to time. Now that was the message for Daniel. The book of Daniel and Revelations are one. One is a prophecy, the other a revelation. One a book sealed, the other a book opened. John heard the mysteries which the thunders uttered, but he was commanded not to write them. The special light given to John, which was expressed in the seven thunders, was a delineation of events which would transpire under the first and second angels' messages. And then she says, it was not best for the people to know these things, for their faith must necessarily be tested. Now, brothers and sisters, if you understand anything about the Millerite movement, one thing you know is that the first and second angels' messages were proclaimed from 1840 to 1844. She doesn't say that these were events which would transpire in the first, second, and third angels' message, just the first and second. So it's from 1840 to 1844 that these seven thunders represent events from the delineation of that time frame. But they are also future events. Keep that in mind. When we get into the reform lines, you'll see that every generation parallels the next generation. You'll see how the Millerite time frame is a prefiguration of the 144,000 time frame. And that's what, again, going back to the beginning of what constitutes the latter rain message. The second part of that is that it is the culmination. It culminates with the unsealing of the seven thunders of Revelation 10, shedding light on the prefiguration of the 144,000 by the Millerite movement. Okay, and she goes on and she says, the special light given to John, which was expressed in the seven thunders, again, was a delineation of events which would transpire under the first and second angel's message. And again, it was not best for the people to know these things, for their faith must necessarily be tested. Which people is she talking about when she says it was not best for the people to know these things? The Millerites. The Millerite movement. It was not best for them to know that what they were doing was actually a prefiguration of a future event which would transpire at the 144,000. In order for God, and then she goes on and says, in the order of God, most wonderful and advanced truths will be proclaimed. The first and second angel's messages were to be proclaimed, but no further light was to be revealed